Hi everyone, welcome back to Coffee, Books, and Rain. I'm Rachel, and I have a big thing of water because it is nearly 6 o'clock in the evening and probably shouldn't be drinking too much coffee at this time of the evening. I am spending some time with my pups and recording with you all, talking about books, waiting for some rain to happen, and all of that jazz. However, let us just get on to the books because I think that's why you all are here. And today's book is The Exiled by Jordan Lowery. Now, this one was a pretty decent read. I will tell you first and foremost, when I picked it up and kind of started reading the first few pages, kind of felt like a gut punch to me. It is dystopian, kind of futuristic, and I mean, just because it's kind of set into a time and place and era, which seems to be more related or more reliant is probably the better word on AI and kind of technology and things of that nature. But the beginning part of this book really does feel kind of like a gut punch. So I was almost tempted to put it down just simply because it wasn't triggering, but it could be for a lot of people. For me, it was just incredibly tragic and kind of with a little bit of a turret again for me. However, I pressed on because I have only so I you kind of squint your eyes, or you're like kind of waiting for that next sucker punch to see what happens next. And so I read it, and it was really good. But again, it does start with kind of this very, like I said, sucker punch, gut punch that I didn't expect coming, but I guess we have to start a story somewhere. Here's the summary. Only those who change survive. Jacob Hughes never set out to be a criminal, but when tragedy shatters his life, his pursuit of vengeance lands him on Eremos, a brutal island where only savages prevail. Ruled by the ruthless Darrow Council, exile to Eremos is a punishment worse than death. One Jacob must endure to confront his own demons. Fighting for his life among the island's feral inhabitants, Jacob forms an uneasy alliance with other exiles. Together, they hunt for Austria, and that's an O, Austria, not the country of Austria, a rumored sanctuary offering hope for Eremos' relentless anarchy. But with time running out and an unstoppable inferno threatening to destroy everything, Jacob must face not just the island's dangers, but the shadows of his past. Can he escape the flames and himself, or will vengeance consume him first? I do think on my e-reader it was somewhere around 330 pages. I just kind of was, I finished it this morning and knew I needed to go ahead and get it recorded so I could get it out. 330 pages on my e-reader. It does say the Kindle edition is $278, and it is published on May 27th of 2025. So I'll probably be a day or two behind that because I've actually got quite a few books due right here at the end of the month, and I'm trying to get them recorded and pushed out. So it looks as though this is Jordan Lowery's debut novel called The Exiled. And looks like he likes to spend his time outdoors and getting lost into a book and listening to 21 Pilots. Honestly, gosh, I haven't listened to them in forever. Now, this book, again, started off pretty strong and hard hitting, so just be aware. There is the passing of a spouse, just kind of putting that out there. And there is a lot of focus on firearms. So that is just a theme of the book that occurs. And just wanting you all to be aware if that's something you don't enjoy reading about. Personally, I don't enjoy reading about those sorts of things either, but for the sake of this book, I think it makes a lot of sense. So Jacob kind of is confronted, has to reconcile the fact of, I don't know if it's really a spoiler because it does happen within like the first 25 pages of the book, but has to reconcile the passing of a loved one who passes pretty much right in front of him. Um, it starts off really sweet in the first kind of chapter or two. Well, take that back. The timeline in this book is dual. We have about a year ago altering with currently on the island of Eremos. So each chapter is either flashing back to before he was on Eremos or pretty much getting to Eremos. So when I say it starts off in the timeline, it starts off about a year in the past when pretty much the events that were kind of triggering for him take place. Um, and it does start off, sounds like he has a pretty idyllic life. He owns a shop that seems to have been also handed down by his father. However, due to the unrest of the country and the fact that the political climate is incredibly unstable, it sounds as though in this particular book that the US government has been overthrown by the Deros government. And so now the Deros government is taking over and chaos kind of reigns supreme. He does find his shop to be located in what's called a no-go zone. And it's just recently kind of, I don't know if the boundaries of like the no-go zone have been kind of pushing out and starting to slowly encompass other like kind of whatever's kind of on their edges. But it seems as though another shop is also kind of included in this no-go zone, as well as his shop as well. He seems to be a very responsible shop owner. Again, he does seem to be the owner of a firearms store, which, but he seems very like he is very strict to paying attention to the law and processing of paperwork. And if he doesn't feel comfortable with giving somebody something, then he won't do it. And this one guy, I think named Richard, comes by and seems as though he's come by quite a bit in the past and wants to buy this shop and leaves like a blank check on the counter because, he's really interested in, I guess, profiteering off of the crime or the crime wave that's happening kind of on the outside. Well, that's not what Jacob is there for. He is not looking to profit. He is simply doing something that was passed down by his father, who taught him how to even make these like firearms, put them together, carve the handles, that sort of thing. So for him, there's much more of a passion for it rather than anything else. Well, then again, something happens, and he's a very likable character until he does go a bit vigilante. I really like how nuanced we do get Jacob's kind of reaction to how everything goes down. I am dancing around the fact of kind of what goes down because I'd really prefer if you read it to understand the scope fully. So I do think Lowery has done a really fantastic job of making Jacob feel fairly real when it comes to, again, processing the trauma and what his next steps are, as though he feels as though his life is over, so he might as well take some people with him. Now, on the other hand, the opposite chapters, or the alternating chapters, I guess you could say, are where he is exiled. I do think you will understand why he is part of the exiled group. You may feel as though he was justified in his actions. However, he is ultimately exiled in what could be considered like an island of prisoners. And that's just no fun for anyone, because I think there's a movie where, like, gosh, what is it, where they store all these prisoners into like just this one building or something like that. And there's one guy who is justified in his anger and hate, and you kind of root for that guy because the other guys are like rapists and murderers and all this sort of stuff, where Jacob really was more kind of a vigilante. But there is a really good balance of like action, character building, world building, suspense, all of this sort of thing. He does make it feel as though this is a possible, I guess, future dystopian world, because the characters do feel like it is set in the future, dealing with the trauma of things going south with the government. And yeah, so honestly, overall, I was really impressed. I'm glad that I kept reading, because I was a little, at the beginning, I was a little hesitant. I was not sure if I wanted to continue reading the story after I had kind of been blindsided by the beginning. Now, again, every character story has to start somewhere, and his just happens to be a complete 180 in where he thought his life was going. Again, he had this kind of idyllic sort of life prior to this event happens, and now he's on a man on a mission. It makes sense. So I do think that Jordan Lowery must have put some really good thought and like feeling into this book to make it what it is. I can understand why it's got some pretty decent reviews on Goodreads, and I will be leaving mine probably tomorrow to go ahead and kind of continue bolstering his numbers, because I would read more from him. I do think we need I don't know. I don't want to say vigilante justice books, because I do think we probably have a ton of those. But this felt kind of fresh with this dystopian vibe, with this. I mean, he's not Batman or anything when I say vigilante justice. He's not putting on a costume and like going out and doing things to save his city or what have you. But he is certainly a man on a mission, and it felt like a good fiction book. It's not sci-fi in the ways that I would really call sci-fi, other than the fact that it's kind of set in the future in a dystopian sort of world where we have AI and these neuropods that are kind of like cars that drive you, and you're like aux in your head, your auxiliary, I guess, like will sync up to pretty much everything. Now that was one thing that was kind of, it was bothersome, but I guess it makes sense for this book, was that everybody is mandated to have this aux, but when they get to this island, it's like turned off on them, so they can't interact with it. And there is one part for Jacob where he's in a pretty dire situation and his aux doesn't respond. So that's also very curious as well. That's a very important part to remember, that I kind of had to remember when we kept going back and forth with the flashbacks and then present day situation. But I think I want to leave it here, and I would really recommend this book. Gosh, I have an entire D&D group who might actually really enjoy this. Like, there's not a ton of books that I just be like, you know what, guys would really probably get behind a book like this. I do think there is just quite a bit of work that works better for the female readership. However, I love seeing books that feel as though I have no issues recommending this to any of my guy friends who enjoy reading, or maybe they just haven't read in a while and they want a really good like action suspense book. That's the category I would put it in. Again, I don't know if I really classify this as sci-fi, because, I mean, we're just working with a couple of technological advances we don't have yet, but feel like there is potential. So that's just my thoughts on how all of that is. But y'all are welcome to say or have whatever thoughts you would love to have, because that's the perks of reading. But I do think as of this time, I was actually paying attention to my. I went on my NetGalley and I was just kind of looking at some of my stats, and it seems as though of 417 books that I have requested on NetGalley, and so I've only been doing it for about 2 years on NetGalley. Of 417, I've only been declined about 30, which is really good percentage in my personal thoughts. And I think I have about 18 pending that I'm waiting to see if I get approved for or not. So, and that will, I think some of those do even expand or span out until like October or November of this year. So I'm starting to get some of my books through the summer and into fall. And I think when I last checked, I had 230 plus videos on YouTube. So honestly, I'm just having fun with this. This is a great time. I do wish people would stop sending me emails about, oh hey, we can optimize your SAO for a great rate. I'm like, I don't actually care that much. I really don't. This is just a side hobby that I just enjoy doing. I like talking about books. I like being here with you guys and all of that jazz. But with all of that being said, I do want to thank you all so much for tuning in. If you have not liked and subscribed already, I hope you will. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I will see you all on the next page.